The answer I gave people always at that stage was, I want to become a mechanic. Because I am.
So it's the first time Eskom has come up in any one of these. Why? Because it was an investment.
It would have been an investment at that time.
But what motivates you to get through the day?
I wasn't big on cash. I had a bursary, so I had to pass. Otherwise,
that is what you're talking about. Is if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
exactly. What my biggest learning was the value of, if you came up with an idea, it was literally happening before you finished your sentence. You know,
that's the long game. But you're still going to make sales today. You're still going to make sales in the next 5 years. How do you do that? You know, do you change strategy and start to look at other markets as export markets?
So you can't be everywhere all the time, and anybody who tries to do that can't be a good leader. So,
if you had to pick one person that you would trade places for a day, who would that be?
being able to switch off allows your brain to
Welcome. I'm actually humbled to have CEO of BMW.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, and it's actually great to be at AutoTrader myself. It's a portal from which I've bought and sold many cars in my life.
CEO of BMW, having bought cars off AutoTrader?
I'm a car lover, for sure.
They were all BMWs, right?
No, not in my past. Nowadays, mainly.
Okay. Well, great to have you. Let me ask you a couple of kind of off-the-cuff questions. If you had to pick one person that you would trade places for a day, who would that be?
If I can be really picky, and it's the right day, it would be Leclerc winning the F1 in front of the home crowd in a Ferrari.
Will BMW ever go to Formula One, do you think?
We've been there. We left. I would say it's not part of our future, but that's a personal opinion.
Okay. Then what is the best compliment you've ever received?
Probably from my kids telling me that I'm a great dad.
And what do you want to be better at?
Being able to play music, being able to play guitar or piano. I would love to, but I'm useless.
Have you ever tried?
Yeah, I've got 3 guitars and I'm useless.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice was probably to invest in property at the right time.
A worst piece of advice?
Not to buy E30 the first time I went to Germany. It was an E30 M3. I should have bought it, I didn't.
Okay. Why? Because it was an investment?
It would have been an investment. At that time, it was not an investment, and people said, no, don't buy that car. The wrong people are driving them. You get the wrong image, but I should have bought one.
Okay. Well, I mean, let's get into a little bit of Peter and your hobbies and growing up years. What were you interested in when you were really young?
It might sound cliche, but cars. I've always been a lover of anything with wheels. My first memories go back to playing with dinky cars and toy cars, and I've been involved somehow with cars my entire life as a hobby and now as a career.
Did you get involved in anything motoring when you were a teenager?
I was buying old cars and restoring them for my own use because I didn't have a lot of money, so I had to buy wrecks or cars that weren't running, and I would rebuild them. This was during my school time still. My first 3 cars I rebuilt from scratch, and I carried on with that. I did quite a few motorcycles as well, so I've always loved mechanical things and taking something useless and making something good out of it.
During those years, did you do that in South Africa? Did you grow up here?
Yeah, that was South Africa.
Okay.
I'm born in Zimbabwe, and I lived in Rwanda for a few years. I lived in the Netherlands for a short period of time, and I came to South Africa when I was 7, and I lived in the Cape then. So I did my schooling and university all in the Cape, and I basically ousted my dad's garage and started rebuilding cars and bikes at a young age.
Were you ever interested in building the Lotus 7?
I was seriously interested in building a Cobra, an AC Cobra. In fact, I bought a wrecked AC Cobra with the intention to rebuild it, but then I got married and the project was sold.
And during those years, people have dreams, So you grow up, maybe not at 7, 8, 9, but certainly in your teenage years, we've all got dreams. We want to become a doctor. Everybody asks me, what do you want to become when you grow up? A doctor, lawyer, accountant, all the boring ones. Some people want to be pilots, firemen, nurses, those kinds of things. What were your dreams when you were young? What did you want to be?
I wouldn't call it a dream. I think I'm just a pragmatic kind of guy, and so the answer I gave people always at that stage was, I want to become a mechanic, because I was already doing it in my spare time and I enjoyed it. But as I sort of matured in high school and started enjoying more conceptual stuff, I decided actually I wanted to become an engineer. So that's why I went and studied mechanical engineering and kept mechanics as a hobby. So I think I'm a pragmatic kind of guy, so maybe I'm not the big dreamer.
No, I mean, mechanical engineer, that's quite a... Did you always dream or want to be that? Or was it more just kind of becoming that out of something that you loved?
Yeah, it was a natural progression. Okay. I mean, I decided, okay, actually my parents said, Peter, you can be a mechanic on the side as a hobby, but why don't you do something at university? So I said, okay, well, I'll do mechanical engineering. And as it progressed, I started focusing on internal combustion engines. So I did a bachelor's degree, a thesis on internal combustion engines. I did a master's on internal combustion engines. I actually designed and built an engine that ran on a hybrid cycle. So it was the Atkinson Otto cycle, a combination of two different cycles, and tested it. And so I was definitely headed towards automotive. That was my dream, I suppose you could say, to end up in the automotive sector.
You know, so if you had to kind of like, you've gone through that, you early 20s, you go to university, studying mechanical engineering, come out of university, did you go straight into BMW?
No, I didn't. I had a bursary from Eskom.
Okay.
So I first worked for Eskom as an engineer for a number of years, and then I was actually lucky that my entry into the auto industry was like a bullseye. I ended up with BMW, and I've been there ever since. So coming on to 29 years this year. 29
years, wow. At what age did you enter BMW?
I was, sure, let me think about that, 27?
27, okay. Okay, so I mean, it's straight out of
now you know
Eskom.
how old I am.
So it's the first time Eskom has come up in any one of these. You know, you worked at Eskom when we had electricity.
We had excess capacity in those days. In fact, I think we were a benchmark utility. We had the highest efficiency and the highest availability literally in the world. And I worked on a power station. So we have it in us here in South Africa.
We do.
It can come back again.
Yes, exactly.
I'm an optimist.
So you know, you're getting into your career. If you could go back to your teenage years and almost time travel, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give yourself?
Have more fun. Don't take life so seriously. I mean, I had plenty of fun. I had a great childhood, but I would say in my university years, I worked pretty hard. As I mentioned, you know, I wasn't big on cash. I had a bursary, so I had to pass. Otherwise, you know, you couldn't keep the bursary going. So I worked really hard. I mean, I would often, you know, work evenings on the weekend instead of going partying. And I think what you realize as you go through life, there's plenty of years to be serious later on. So I would have probably had more fun, partied a bit more.
Do you think that work ethic, though, you know, taught you about work ethic today? Because, you know, you said you didn't party on weekends, you studied because you had to pass, had a bursary. You know, there's kind of some pressure on you. I mean, do you think that had an effect on your work ethic today? Or do you think you could have partied more and still had the same work ethic today?
I think I probably could have. I mean, I didn't not party, but I didn't party enough. That's what I meant. And I think, I mean, the work ethic is something I learned in high school already. And I think I could have partied a bit more, you know, gone surfing a bit more often, and still gotten the grades and passed and made a good career of it. But I was really motivated and I was focused, and I suppose that's not a bad thing either.
So, who are your heroes? Do you have heroes and mentors over your career?
I mean, if you talk about heroes, you know, people say you look up to. There's people that inspire me. Let's say Steve Jobs, for example. You know, the way he reinvented an industry, his focus on product excellence, his leadership qualities are not what I want. Let's be honest. I've read the book, but what he did for a sector and his vision was amazing. Alex Zanardi, for me, is an absolute hero. What he went through, losing, you know, his legs in the accident, and then coming back and racing and doing all the sports he still continued to do and inspiring people, amazing man. And of course, for as a South African, I think for most of us, Nelson Mandela as a person is an absolute hero. I mean, what he did for this country is unfathomable, and I think we can all learn from him as a person.
So, in all of that, you know, you now lived probably half your life
I hope.
I hope. Me
I hope
too.
there's still 50% to go.
Exactly. What would you say you would want to be remembered for?
Sure. That's a really deep question. If I look, obviously on the family side, and I've already mentioned it, is obviously you want to be remembered for having a really positive influence on your kids' lives, you know, and that's definitely something very important to me, and family life's very important to me. If I look career-wise, I would say actually the phase that I'm in right now is probably the phase where I have probably the best basis for something to be remembered for, and it's on the one hand preserving South Africa's unique history, BMW South Africa's unique history. We're very busy with that now in our 50 years celebration, actually creating, let's just say, assets that our history is not forgotten. You know, the glorious 325 IS, 333I, and things like that. And more will come about that soon. You'll hear about it. I can't announce it now, but we're putting a lot of effort into assets, physical assets, that people don't forget our glorious history here. So that's the one thing, is that, you know, in our 50 years of BMW South Africa, people look back and remember it. But I also want to be sure that as part of the leadership team here in South Africa, we secure the next 50 years for this company, because it has a role to play in our company's, let's say, emotional fabric, but also in our responsibility towards South Africans and job creation and keeping this industry alive and going. And it's a crucial part for the industry, obviously the next decade at least, where the world seems to be going electric, and we need to make sure that we plot that future together as an industry. So as a player, together with NAMSA, together with the DTIC and the industrial program that's being developed. And it's exciting to be part of that, because if we do it right, we secure the future of this industry, and we secure the future of the jobs, and a big part of South Africa's export.
So I suppose it's a key moment for you to have a key influence in the next phase, because we're almost at a precipice.
Yeah.
As a country, and BMW is one of the biggest brands in the country. As a matter of fact, I've owned 2 BMWs in my life. The BMW 3 Series, the Gusheshe. Should never have sold that car.
Agreed.
I think it's an investment now. I think that thing is probably worth 1-2 million rand if you try and get your hands on one, the original.
Yeah.
And then I was fortunate to have a 650 a couple of years ago. I loved that car. Only reason I sold it was the mileage was getting higher. It was black. It's 2-door. It was a beautiful, beautiful car, BMW 650.
We make plenty other exciting models, so if you get tempted, you know who to speak to.
Exactly. So tell me about the day in the life of Peter. What are your routines? What motivates you? You know, how do you wake up early in the morning? Do you exercise first? You know, give us a little bit of the rundown of what your day looks like.
Yeah, I'd say I try to wake up early in the morning. Actually, I love the morning. It's the best part of the day, especially here in Africa, where you've got the sun coming up, coming into spring and summer now, and it's beautiful. So I love mornings. I want to exercise every day, but I don't, because other things get in the way. But I do try and exercise fairly regularly in the morning. In fact, one day of the week, I purposely only start meetings a bit later so that I ensure that I exercise that day, because I think it's really important to keep yourself fit and healthy for many reasons, but it's also fun. The first thing I do, though, when I wake up in the morning is switch on the coffee machine, because one of my hobbies we didn't talk about is I'm a self-taught hobby barista. So I have a decent coffee machine, and I only want good coffee. So that's the first thing I'll do. I'll check if there's anything to prepare for the day while I have my first cup of coffee, you know, any work topics still to catch up on before the day starts. I try to cycle. That's my sport of choice, is cycling. So I've got a nice static bike, so I can exercise at home, whatever the weather's like. Get my son ready for school. We have one young kid still at home. He's 11-year-old. So I try to get him sorted out and ready for school. Bring my wife her first coffee of the day, ideally with a heart on it, and then get off to work before 7. And if the day goes well, I drop my son off at school, so we have some time in the car together, to catch up on a little bit of maybe maths help, maybe help him with his Afrikaans, because he's learning Afrikaans now properly in school since we're back in South Africa. So yeah, that's how I try and start the day. Obviously, as you know, a day in the office is full of meetings. You're managed by your calendar, and that's as a manager, as a leader, you spend your time with your people, guiding, listening a lot, ideally, and making decisions for the company. I try and get out quite often to see our dealers or our partners, our retailers, suppliers, and so on. And then the evenings generally are pretty much some time with the family, maybe watch a Netflix show, have a whiskey with my wife, and get to bed on time so that, you can start the next day again bright and early.
What motivates you? So, getting through your day, that's loosely the everyday of Peter. But what motivates you to get through the day?
Well, like I said earlier on, I'm an optimist, right? So I'm generally a positive thinker, and I see chances and opportunities rather than threats and difficulties in a day. So, I'm excited about what I do. I love my work. I love working with people. And like I said earlier on, my hobby's always been auto industry, cars, motorcycles, and so on. I'm lucky that our brand has both. So I have the luxury that I actually work in a field that's my hobby. So I just love the topics we talk about and the things we do at work. So I probably can count on one hand the days I haven't really felt like going to work in my career. So I find it's a lot of fun. Secondly, the luck to work, or the fortune, let's say, to work for a brand like BMW. In fact, the BMW Group brands are all emotional passion brands, right? And if you want that passion to come across at the customer, it's got to be felt in the company. So the decisions we make are passionate decisions. It's not just the product we're passionate about, it's the brand, it's about how we serve our customers and so on. So days are exciting, meetings aren't boring, and in the end, it's, business is people. We're a technology brand, but people make the difference, and I love people and love working with people. So I enjoy work. I enjoy holidays, of course, as well. I'm not a workaholic by any means, but when I've got to go to work, I'm happy to go there and have an exciting day.
Well, I read something a while ago that said, in order to be really happy, you've got to do one of three things. I can remember two of them. The one is amass enough wealth to have passive income that is more than your burn rate or your expenses, right? Because then you're financially free, you can do whatever you want, and then you're really happy. But the other alternative is effectively doing what you love. Because then if you're in the same position, really. So, it sounds like, that is what you're talking about, is if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Exactly. And I think that's really important, because you do spend more time at work than you spend at home. And we all end up working a little bit at home as well. So I think it's important that you love what you do. And equally, that when you're at home, you love being with your family or riding your bicycle or working on your car and are not constantly thinking about your work. And yes. I think that's also important. I'm very good at switching off. So I'm not constantly looking at my phone at home or thinking about what I have to do tomorrow. So I live in the moment and I enjoy what I'm doing. And whether it's taking apart a motorcycle that I'm busy customizing or spending time playing football with my son, I'm enjoying that.
So do you think it's an important leadership skill, or even a skill at the level that you are, to be able to switch like that, switch off, and not have work bleed into everything you do? What are the benefits of that?
I think for me at least, it's essential, because I pretty much, when I do things, I go into them full tilt. And I think if you don't separate what you do, then you can't really focus on what you're doing. So I think it's essential. I think also your family deserves it. If you work hard in the day, when you're back spending time with them, if you constantly say, just wait a moment, I've got to answer an email or whatever, that's not right either, right? So they're not getting the time that they deserve. Yes. And I honestly believe being able to switch off allows your brain to be much fresher on the topic when you get back to it. If you're constantly thinking about a topic, you might not find the solution. If you switch off and you go and do something that you enjoy, and 2 hours later you look at it refreshed, you might see the answer that you couldn't see before. And I think that's also important as a leader. If you don't switch off, your associates, your team, feel under pressure to also always be on.
Yeah.
You know, so I tell my team very clearly on the weekend, you know, if I send you an email because I've got some time, I don't expect an answer. Likewise, if you send me an email, don't expect an answer. If you need me urgently, give me a phone call.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not an emergency doctor, so no one's going to lose their life if I don't respond. And with giving them that signal, they also have the right to switch off and not be at my beck and call all weekend, every evening, and so on.
Yeah.
Because I want that from people, because I believe we're better at our work if we stop thinking about it for a given amount of time.
Well, I suppose the absence of something makes you miss it. If you can create the absence of work by focusing 100% on something else, when you get back to it, you enjoy it more.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what holidays are for.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
You know, the guys who take their work on holiday also don't have a decent holiday, and they don't do their work justice either.
Yes. And I guess by trying to do too many things at once, work on your motorbike, think about work, you're actually doing both to a substandard degree.
Agreed.
You know, you're not doing one thing at 100%. I like that. I mean, that switching off is an important trait, I would say, for a leader to practice. And I like the fact that you say this, the team is allowed to, or is encouraged to practice the same thing, you know, to switch off and not expect an answer, or not expect to answer in the same vein.
Yeah, it's important. And like I said, if you don't lead in that style, people don't feel that they can either. So
let's get on to your journey to your current role as CEO of BMW South Africa. I did say it right?
Yeah.
BMW South Africa. You know, you were 27, just got out of Eskom, probably at the right time. Just got out of Eskom, straight into BMW. How did that switch happen? What's the catalyst? What made it happen?
Well, I think it was an opportunity came along. At that stage, BMW was looking to hire a number of young engineers. As we were making quite a technological shift here in this country, and it was during the era where we shifted from being a plant that produced everything CKD, so complete knockdown for the country, so we produced 3 series, 5 series, 7 series, even 8 series in the country, and we switched to a plant that produced one product for export. It was part of the reaction to the government's industrial program, MIDP it was called in those days. And it made a lot of sense, because if you produce one car, you can focus on getting volumes through the production line, which brings better quality. And the whole idea there was also, if you produce decent volumes, you can start localizing components and create jobs. So a great program. And with that switch in the company, we started to then export and import a lot more cars into the country. And we started bringing in, let's say, the technology that was already available elsewhere in the world. For example, we introduced, together with unleaded petrol, came the catalytic converter, higher levels of emission, and so on. And so they wanted a number of engineers to enter the company to aid that process. So I applied for the job, and I was fortunate to get it. I was literally still a graduate there. I only worked for Eskom for a few years. And I started in after sales, because that fitted well to engineering. And then, I mean, as with BMW, we have a very, let's say, broad view on people development. So you're not hampered by what you've studied or haven't studied, or what your previous job was, because I moved from after sales into product management. I then moved into sales, ran the Cape region, and then came back and ran the marketing division, even though I'd never studied anything to do with marketing, for example. So the BMW philosophy is to really keep people moving fairly regularly and give you breadth when you're still very young in the company in the lower grade. And that gives you the chance, of course, to do a lot more later on in life.
And so, you know, you enter BMW as an engineer. Was that in the Cape, or did you come to the Roslyn plant?
I came to Midrand. I started directly in Midrand.
Okay, started directly in Midrand. And engineering in what sense? Actually mechanically with the vehicles? Or, or what type of engineering did you do at BMW?
Zero engineering. I was hired as an engineer
okay.
to act as, my title was technical consultant to marketing. So they wanted someone who understood the technical background of what we were doing and why we were doing it, and enable our retail partners, so that I was actually responsible for the introduction of unleaded fuel and catalytic converters in the BMW range, and what effect it had in the marketplace, and how customers should deal with it and understand, don't put leaded fuel in this car because it will destroy your cat and so on, and explaining to our dealers how to work with that. And as we added technologies, my job was to bring that to the marketplace, so I supported marketing with that. For example, when we launched the E38, I worked in preparation of the vehicles. I was at every launch talking to customers, explaining all the technology in E38 and so on. So they wanted, I was immediately exposed to the marketing world when I got there, and actually realized that actually where things are happening is in sales and marketing and not in engineering here in South Africa, and that's why my path went in that direction. So I pretty soon after that enrolled in the MBA studies and guided myself into that direction.
That's quite an interesting concept or thing, in that sales and marketing won't understand the technical detail of how or why something is made, not because they're stupid, but just because they didn't become engineers. So really your role sounded like it was a bridge of communication between the technical bits of new technologies and the voice to the consumer as well as to the retailer, which was quite smart of BMW to do, and I would imagine other companies do a similar thing, and to then send you on that path to sales marketing. I always say that sales is a process and can be taught. It's one thing we do here at AutoTrader is sales is a process, is one step after the next step after the next step. So that kind of like leads me into the communication question. Communication obviously has become a big part of your role, even probably now as CEO. You then from there traveled the world.
Correct.
With BMW. How did the different cultures and the challenges around communication with different cultures influence how you did your job?
Yeah, it was. I had a very varied experience following that, because after running marketing here, I went overseas. Indeed, as you said, I went to Germany actually first to get to understand headquarters, the BMW culture, build a network at headquarters. It was supposed to be a 3-year contract and then come back to South Africa. And after a year, they sent me to Japan to head up marketing there. And that was a massive learning for me, because I didn't speak a word of Japanese. They didn't send me there because I could speak Japanese or anything like that. I'd run marketing here, so they said, okay, please go do that for us in Japan. And there, I think, was my biggest learning the value of delegation and trust, because until then I'd run very small teams. And I could do a lot myself, because I knew what I was doing and the language and the culture. Suddenly there I had to rely on my team. If we did a TV ad or a print ad, I couldn't read it, I couldn't understand it. I had to ask, what does it mean? And then I had to ascertain through many questions, is this what we want to say for the brand? And the nuances between the lines and all that. So I had to learn to understand the different culture, and then a lot of trust and a lot of delegation. But that was essential for my future jobs, because as you rose in the company, you could never survive without delegating to big teams. At one stage, our team was about 6,000 people. Wow. So Japan was a major learning for me, and I think it was also it added another facet to my intercultural understanding of how cultures tick and how different people do things, and to learn what's good in that and take that back with you into your leadership toolbox, let's say. And I can say that, the Japanese culture, the German culture, the South African cultures are extremely different to each other. But if you're in a multinational corporation, you need to be able to work with all these cultures and actually find the best in each of them.
Do you think South Africans are strategically fortunate in that we fit into varying cultures a lot easier than other nations like Americans, British people, because of our diverse culture in South Africa? Do you think we transition to places like Germany, Japan easier than they would?
I think we definitely have some of the right ingredients for it. And one is, of course, that we grew up in a very multicultural environment. I think also South Africans are a very resilient nation. And so you don't give up with the first setbacks. You keep trying, and I think we're very good at problem solving. And in working in a different culture is a huge amount of trial and error required. You make mistakes and you learn from them. And if you give up too soon, you're not going to succeed in that kind of culture. Yeah. So I think we're quite good at that. Where we're not the best, I would say, is that we're quite sensitive people, actually, funny enough. So we're easily insulted by, say, a normal German response. Yeah. And that's something where we've got to learn. I mean, that's why going international is all about you growing and you learning as well, is that we've got to learn to understand how communication is also meant by the person who actually sends it. And so I would say our resilience is something that makes South Africans stand out. And I think why BMW South Africa has been so successful within BMW's history.
You're not the first person to mention sensitivity of South Africans. It's interesting because most CEOs of South African OEMs have traveled the world, been sent to different countries, and experienced different cultures. And it seems like quite a common thread. Why do you think we're so sensitive as a nation?
I'm not sure. I think maybe we've grown up with a bit of the British properness in our backgrounds, and we haven't been exposed to people, let's say, talking very directly to you or being critical in a direct way. Yes. Which, by the way, is also unhealthy because someone being critical behind your back doesn't help at all, right? True. And I mean, that's where I come in to my team here, and I often say to them, guys, let's talk to people, not about them. If there's an issue, let's talk to the person, let's sort it out, because the person can do something about it. If you talk behind their backs, it doesn't help, right? And that's one of our weaknesses in South Africa, is we often talk about the problem, not to the problem. And I don't know where it comes from. I just think that we've been brought up with this almost over politeness.
Politically correctness.
Yeah, politically correctness, and so we're easily offended when someone talks to us direct, even though it's not meant to be offend. It's just meant to be a straightforward feedback. Yes. And I've noticed it myself, because when I got to Germany in the beginning, I also found my nose was out of joint when I was tackled straight on about something that I felt could have been said in a different way. But it's much more efficient. The top problem's on the table, and actually, when you understand it, in Germany you can have an outright shouting argument with someone, and then you can still go and have a beer that evening, and no one holds offense about it. So if you can understand where it's coming from and how it's meant, it helps a lot. And then coming back to South Africa and leading my team here, I often have to kind of explain, okay, that wasn't meant that way, this is how you should take it, and actually they've got a point, let's be better at that. Yeah. And I try to also inspire my team, and together with our HR division now, we're talking about courageous conversations, get the topic on the table, don't offend someone, but that's how we can get better. So
play
I think
the ball, not the person, but be direct.
Exactly. It's like a good sportsman. So I think South Africans can get better at that, and I think also, our colleagues from overseas have the same problem when they come here, is because they don't understand our subtle hints and how we would like someone to do something differently, because it comes so masked in politeness that they don't see it as a problem. So
aren't the Japanese people that way too? Quite kind of sensitive. Their gestures are, I know nothing compared to you about Japanese people, but their gestures are quite subtle, but they're serious.
Yeah, it's a very indirect culture.
Yeah.
Things are almost always said in an implied way, and you've got to be able to read out of the implied way, and it wouldn't come straight to the point. They'll talk around the point to get there. And it's an extremely polite culture. I've never felt better treated than I did in Japan. The politeness, the respect. In dealing with each other in traffic, you put your indicator on, there's a gap instantly. And it's a wonderful culture to live in, but then you need to be able to read between the lines to understand what you're actually being told. And that was a big learning for me as well.
So Germany, Japan, where did you venture after that?
After Japan, I went back to Germany, and actually had quite a long stint in Germany in working in sales channel, so topics around retail. I actually started up a project called Future Retail, which I ran for a while. And then they asked me to go to China. So I went to China and I worked in a joint venture in China, so BMW Brilliance Automotive, where I was head of sales and marketing. And so I had the chance to work in a very different environment, because the joint venture is not the same as a wholly owned sales company, let's say, and experience the Chinese culture, but also experience China in a phase of booming growth. So a very different world, let's say, to what I experienced in Japan. And again, you can learn a lot from a country that's in rapid growth, because you learn to do things very quickly. And use the opportunity, seize the day.
People are often anti-China, and some people see China and Japan as no different, that haven't been there. How different are they?
They couldn't be more different. Extremely different countries, extremely different ways about going about business. And I hear we're generalizing, because it's not everybody's always the same, but
exactly.
China was one of the easiest places to work in for me, because they were so focused on the opportunity. And I came with a lot of BMW experience. I was working with a young team. Most of them had only been with the company a couple of years at most. So if you came up with an idea, it was literally happening before you'd finished your sentence, and they would try things with virtually, no risk, no fun, and not everything worked, but you could really try things like rapid prototyping. It was the ultimate of agile.
Did you allow to fail?
Yeah, and it was normal. We always talk about developing a failure culture. That was natural to them, because if you don't try something, you're not going to succeed at all, right? And in Japan, it was exactly the opposite. It was preserve what you have today. Resistance to change is immense. So to do something in Japan took a huge amount of effort. In China, it took one sentence and it would happen. And so it was a complete different learning for me, working in two countries not far apart from each other, both in the BMW environment, but completely different. And it was a great place to work, absolutely.
After China?
Back to Munich, actually to a very interesting and challenging job. I ran the German sales subsidiary, so the home market in Germany, after running the sales and marketing in China. I asked my boss, guys, there's enough Germans to run the German market. Why you're bringing in a foreigner? He felt it was time for a different culture in the company there. So I had a very interesting time, and you can imagine running the sales subsidiary under the eyes of headquarters is not an easy job, because you have 10,000 people who all know better. So you get a lot of advice, but you learn out of that as well. And it was a wonderful time for me. It was also where the company turned 100 years. So we could celebrate 100 years of BMW history in the oldest sales subsidiary of the BMW Group in the German market. So some real exciting highlights. And again, I learned out of that. I learned a lot out of that.
And so Munich, back to South Africa, or did you go somewhere else first?
No, after that job, I ran after sales for the company. So I moved back into headquarters then and ran the after sales division for the entire world. And that was actually a homecoming for me, because I started at BMW in after sales here in South Africa, and the first time I again did after sales was then in 2018.
Oh, wow.
And after that, I returned to South Africa. So after leaving on a 3-year contract, I took 18 years before coming back.
The longest 3 years of your life.
A lot of fun, I can tell you.
So why did you return?
Again, as with most things, it wasn't something that was planned and was on some succession planning chart. It came up that they were looking for a new CEO of BMW South Africa. I'd always wanted to run my own company, so to speak, because running the sales division or the sales company in Germany is not running your own company, because you got headquarters right there.
The buck stops always at someone else.
Exactly, right? The buck stops at headquarters. So I saw the opportunity to come home, and work in the culture that I grew up in and knew, to run my own company while staying at BMW, and I don't have to leave to go run a small company. I can run a relatively small company within the BMW structures. Exciting also for me was that the breadth of the South African operation. We've got a production facility here which is joined into the company, very much part of what we do because of APDP and the government industrial program. Without the one, the other wouldn't exist like it does today. We have a very big IT facility here producing IT for the BMW world. We produce software for 52 countries in the world. And of course we have the financial services company here. So this microcosm of everything that BMW does here in South Africa, to lead that was really exciting for me. And I also saw that we're at a very key phase in the industry's future. And so I thought, bringing what I know from BMW into a market and a culture that I know, I can make a difference. Yeah. And we spoke about right at the beginning, what you want to be remembered for. And I felt that it was good timing for me, and the company felt it was good timing for BMW. And so that's how it happened.
Well, I mean, congratulations. You came back just before COVID, right?
I came back.
2 years before.
No, I came back. I started the after-sales job in 2018, and I came back as the country opened up. In fact, I was on one of the first flights out of Germany after the big lockdown in 2020. Okay. So I came back at the end of 2020 and started in 21.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So let's get into BMW's strategy a little bit. There's a couple of things that I think BMW have pioneered. It was interesting that you said run software development globally. I'd like to get into that, if you can. But before I do, BMW was one of the first OEMs in South Africa, maybe even worldwide, to move from a franchise dealership model to an agency type model, where there's single pricing, you developed your own platform software, where consumers could go on a journey and buy a car, which I've looked at many times, and I think it's one of the best I've seen. So what drove BMW in that direction, and particularly first?
Yeah, it's an interesting process and journey. It's something we talked about in the management circle when I was still part of that circle in Munich, as to how are we going to develop retail for the future. And in that sense, there was a number of things we wanted to tackle, and we felt that the agency model was a solution for that. So we chose South Africa at that stage as our test balloon, as our pilot market, for a number of reasons. One is it's a nicely kind of isolated market, easy to try something in without it, let's say, spilling across the borders too easily. And there's another reason why we chose South Africa, and that is South Africa has proven to be a country of innovation, and actually a number of firsts, which you probably don't even know about, have happened in this country. So we were the first BMW-owned production facility outside Germany. When they opened in 1973, the Rosen plant was the first time BMW started its global expansion and production.
I did not know that.
Okay, Motorplan was invented in South Africa.
Really?
The maintenance program, we were the first. We invented it here in South Africa, and we exported the IP to Germany, and now they sell something called BMW Service Inclusive, but it came out of Motorplan. So the IT hub is not the first expansion of IT outside Germany, but it's by far the biggest and fastest growing. So I think BMW has a history of successful firsts in this country, and we come back to resilience and problem-solving abilities of South Africans, and that's why we said, okay, these things all combined make South Africa a good place to try this out for BMW. So the team was entrusted to pilot something for the BMW Group, and it was a success. If you ask our retailers, I think they're happy with it. I'm happy with it, and so much so that the group is about to launch the agency model in Europe for the Mienie brand next year. It's public knowledge. I'm not telling you any secrets. The team was here actually early this week, to take a look and exchange with us on lessons learned and what they should be aware of before they go live. And I think it shows a lot of faith in South Africa and the team in South Africa. Is to entrusting us to do things like that.
What were some of the lessons learned in this agency switch?
There was I'd say one of the key lessons learned was involve your retail partners from day one, which we did. It wasn't something that we just talked about in a small dark room and then announced and they had to live with it. We worked with them on it from day one. I wasn't here, right? Okay, my predecessor did that, but there was a lot of involvement together with our retail partners. So I think that was a key lesson learned. The IT solution is a continuously, let's say, adapting, and it's something that we continue to develop. And I think that was something also, the company was used to developing IT software and then going live, and then it was finished with, this is a software that we've developed as we've gone along, and you've probably seen the first version. It wasn't really all that cool. It's much better today from an emotional experience, from a customer experience. We've added features that we didn't have because we didn't know we needed them, because we never done retailing ourselves. So I'd say the organic development of the front end has been something that we've learned with day by day, and of course, again, living with feedback from our customers, because we do a lot of customer surveys, and living with feedback from our retail partners. Obviously, we piloted it. It actually went live literally a month before COVID hit South Africa. So we went through a phase where we were actually quite lucky that we could still sell, because we had this online platform when dealerships were literally closed. But then we went through the whole phase of the COVID-induced product shortages and the semiconductor-induced product shortages. So we had a time where we really had to say, how do you deal with an online platform when you don't have much stock?
Yeah.
How do you keep customers interested? How do you get their orders when there's nothing to show because you don't have stock?
Yeah.
And now that's changed. Obviously, now stock is well available, and now we're learning how to work in that kind of environment. So you continue to learn, and I think that's what's been brilliant about it, is that it's been a learning experience for us. But the key learning experience was working together with our retail partners and really listening to them.
So, I mean, the first time I saw the platform was at 2 dealerships. I went down to the Cape and saw it at Paulberg BMW with Simone, and then Somerset BMW. In the same visit, I visited both BMW dealerships, and they took me through the platform. That was the first time I saw it. It was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And it was impressive at that time. So, was that software, front end, back end, whatever you want to call it, developed in South Africa, not influenced by Germany?
No, it wasn't developed in South Africa. It was actually developed with a partner from Great Britain. So they already had an existing platform, and we then adapted it for our brand needs. And because we also, remember, we went live with BMW Mienie and motorcycles, Motorrad. So, and they didn't have that kind of complexity. So we worked together with them, but the front end was developed by a partner, and then the back end interface was developed by BMW here in South Africa.
But all designed by South Africans.
Yeah, the user journey was designed by our South African team. Munich gave us full freedom.
Lovely.
Literally full freedom. The team was here in South Africa. They designed the user journey, they designed the front end, and when we upgraded it, basically I think 9 months later, it was totally done here, and we basically told the partner what we wanted. So I think if you compare what you saw pre-COVID to what you see nowadays, it's a much better site, and the user experience is much better as well.
I'm going to make it my mission to go and have a look at the latest.
Buy a car.
Yeah.
You can have your third BMW.
Good point, actually. So, moving on to the Roslyn plant and your 4.2 billion rand investment. Tell me a little bit about the commitment of BMW Germany, South Africa, into that plant or manufacturing as a whole. What are the future plans? Electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids. You've got the BMW iX3 now, and the iX40 and 50. I must thank you for the 40. You gave it to me to drive for a week. I didn't want to give the car back. It was like driving my couch. Those seats are unbelievable. Nonetheless, but I mean that's an imported car, right?
Yeah.
But what has the Roslyn plant got in its future in terms of this transition?
Okay, so the Roslyn plant produces X3 currently, and as you know, under the industry program here, we produce it mainly for export. So we export the predominant volume and we import the rest. So we import basically all the electric cars you just described. The iX3 is also imported. So what we announced on our 50th birthday celebration was that the future of the plant for the next product is now decided. It's going to be the new X3. It's going to come the second half of next year. And it ultimately will come with internal combustion engines, so petrol, diesel, and a plug-in hybrid. And the plug-in hybrid will be produced in South Africa exclusively for the world.
Lovely.
So again, another real a motion of trust towards BMW South Africa, because we are producing, if someone wants a hybrid anywhere in the world, it's going to come from here. So we need to deliver on time, obviously, and in the quality our customers want worldwide, but I think it's a really nice vote of confidence in South Africa. That, of course, requires some changes to the production line. It's the first step of electrification of our plant. That's how we refer to it. We're electrifying the plant, which means you need to bring in competency and skills, because working with high voltage is quite different to what we know from the ICE era. We need to change the production line, because now the marriage of body and drivetrain has to happen basically twice, because you have two drivetrains going into the vehicle. You have the petrol drivetrain and the electric drivetrain. So all of that has to be modified on the production line. The body shop has to be obviously adapted to take the different body configurations of ICE engined cars, so internal combustion engine and plug-in hybrid vehicles, as well as, of course, the whole logistics chain had to be adapted. So what we've now, with this announcement, what we've secured basically is the next decade of production here in Plant Roslyn. We've secured electrification in Plant Roslyn, which has knock-on effects in skills development, in supplier development, and so on, and forms the basis of then possibly the decade after that being fully electric. And the big question out there is, does Europe really stick to their plan? Because it's still a plan, it still hasn't gone through, let's say, Parliament and been gazetted, as we would term it here in South Africa. It still hasn't reached that stage of finality. And recently, I think it was Porsche and BMW argued very strongly for e-fuels being allowed past this cutoff of 2035, and it seems to have reached acceptance. So the jury is still out as to exactly what share of the world's volume will be fully electric in the future. And that's why BMW sails under the banner of a power of choice or technology openness. So we still develop petrol, diesel, hybrid, and fully electric, and we're working also on hybrid fuel cell. We can talk more about that sometime. But because we believe that the future is still not set. I mean, where the world's going to go depends a lot on legislation, but it also depends on customers. That's why we talk about the power of choice. The customer should choose what they drive. So we have these powertrains all still currently in development and in production. But if the world goes, as is predicted, that Europe and the UK go fully electric by 2035, we need to be producing a full electric car in South Africa, because they're our export markets. 74% of our volume goes to the UK and Europe. Wow. And you can imagine, if you lost that demand, you lost those customers, you lose the production volume, you lose the shifts, you lose the jobs. So that's this car is so significant for us that we're now producing the first electrified vehicle in our plant, because that opens the doors for the next step, if necessary, to go fully electric.
So on the internal combustion engine side, some other OEMs, part of their strategy to keep up volumes, to keep sales up, is to supply ICE vehicles to Africa and other countries. Because at the moment, as you said, 74% of your production goes to Europe and England. Does BMW have the same outlook? In order to, so yes, there's a path for electrification. That's a long path, that's the long game, but you've still got to make sales today. You've still got to make sales in the next 5 years. How do you do that with the backdrop of 2035? Do you change strategy and start to look at other markets as export markets?
That would be an opportunity, obviously, and the first and foremost, our power of choice is exactly to cater for the world's needs and the world's demands, right? So if we would go fully electric, you would obviously lose significant volume if we had to do that today. So with the power of choice, we make sure we can really serve all our customers worldwide. Now, of course, South Africa, one strategic direction could be that South Africa focuses on the ICE markets in the world in the future, and we only produce internal combustion engine vehicles. But I think for now it's too early to decide, because that could be a dead end for our industry. And if you totally leave the electric path and look, and then 2 decades later the world indeed does go fully electric, to get back into the electric path by then might be too late, and the industry might then be dead. Yeah. So that's why we're keeping it open, and we're working very intensively with the auto industry, our partners, NARCAM, NAMSA obviously, and the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, to determine this plan, this framework for going electric, because I believe South Africa has to have a level of electrification in our product mix to ensure our future. We can't bet all our money on one horse. Just remember the beta VHS discussion when we were youngsters. We don't want to make any mistakes ignoring a segment that might be important for the future. So for now, I think we need to keep a broad view on the market and see where Europe's going in this next decade. But be prepared to go electric and start preparing our component suppliers. We need the skills in this country anyway, because we need to sell electric cars in this country and be part of that mix. And so I think we're developing a future where we still have a number of alternatives.
I mean, South Africans are good at that. We're good at those kinds of conundrums, I think. So two technical questions. Seeing as you're an engineer, I can ask you these. On a production plant, okay, can you produce an electrified car and an ICE vehicle on the same line?
Easy.
Okay, so that would kind of make it not as expensive to change as creating a brand new production line.
It would. When you say electrified, I'm talking hybrid now. When you
Yes.
go fully electric, then your let's say drivetrain is significantly different. Okay, a hybrid is quite easy to relatively easy to integrate the second drivetrain into the vehicle. And in the plant, I mean, most of the body stays the same. The interior generally stays the same. You need a fuel tank and a battery, so you need to make space for all of those. But we've already adapted our production line. Now it's already been adapted to take in the plug-in hybrid. So we did the body shop during the shutdown, and we've had 2 small shutdowns this year where we've added certain parts on the assembly line. Okay. That's fairly easy, and that's why we will be producing in this plant, a petrol car, a diesel car, and a hybrid all on the same line. Okay. And we do it also in Europe, in our European plants. I mean, we've produced i3 and I think it was 1 Series and X1 all in the same factory. So that's quite possible. Once you start going though with a fully electric platform, the battery then dominates the chassis, and the way it gets put together is quite different. So that then starts getting quite challenging. And for Rosneft, in any case, with our size and space, that gets quite challenging.
That's interesting because I've always wondered, do you need to create a new production line? And it sounds to me like fully battery electric, yes. With plug-in hybrids, probably not. It's like an off-ramp, for those vehicles going down there.
It's actually just additional stations on the production line. So the petrol car will skip that station and move on. Yes. The hybrid stops and gets the battery installed, for example.
Interesting. So let's move kind of onto the final bit, and that is your time. Mm-hmm. As CEOs, there's a lot of demand on your time. Probably lots of people calling you for quick decisions, quick fire input, lots of meetings, etc. How do you manage your time? I mean, time can't be managed because you can't stop or start it. Mm-hmm. But how do you manage your time during a typical day?
I think the way you make it work is first and foremost having a great team helps a lot. Your front office manages your time a lot for you, but having a great team means you can delegate, and it's absolutely essential. You can't be everywhere all the time, and anybody who tries to do that can't be a good leader. So delegation is a very important part of it. Luckily, since COVID, a lot can happen virtually, so you don't waste all that time driving to a shorter meeting. When it's a hybrid meeting, you can join it virtually. So very often, even though you'd like to be there physically, you opt for virtual because then the driving time can be used for something else. Prioritization, absolutely essential. And then, like I said, prioritization and delegation is all very important for that. And I find it works fairly well when you're prepared to use the mix of saying no to some things, delegating to others some other things, being virtually in attendance on things that aren't priority 1, but then when it's a priority A discussion, like the meeting 2 nights ago with the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, you go there yourself so that you can be part of the discussion and make sure that you get your points across. And that way it works. And you've got to be prepared to work long days sometimes and long hours, and maybe then still catch up on some emails in the evening at home. But if you balance that with switching off, other times it works fine.
And then on the flip side, how do you manage people? You know, you get. I always say, you know, people are, every individual is different, and you can't use a blunt instrument, you know, the same way on every single person. And sometimes you have to use a scalpel.
Absolutely.
So how do you manage those differences in different individuals?
I think we actually have a term in our company called situational leadership, right? So you're absolutely right. Some people you need to manage completely different to others. Some people you can give massive space and they come to you if they have issues. Other people you need to look a little bit more regularly over their shoulder. Ultimately with the intention to coach and guide them till they get to the point where you can also let go and give lots of space. There's also situations where you need to be on the ground, you know, almost leading in a transactional way, in the sense of, you know, month end, for example. I mean, you've got to be on the ground, you've got to push for the numbers, and sometimes a little bit of pressure helps. But there's other times where you need to work with a far more like transformational mindset. You know, spend time with your team, working on your culture, working on your strategy, working on the next 5 years. And so your leadership style has to be able to change and adapt. You know, you've got to be able to do both. You've got to be the tough transactional guy when the numbers aren't coming, but you also need to be the guy who then, you know, lets go and gives time for working on, you know, how we're going to develop our strategy for the future, how we're going to develop, you know, the culture here, and work on the softer skills. If you're always a hard transactional leader, you never make time for those things, and your team never grows and develops, and your people never grow to the point where you can actually let go and say, I know everything is good in this person's hand, I can now spend time on something else. So I would say I like to be a playing coach. So I'm the kind of guy who really likes to spend time with my people, understanding what they're doing, not micromanaging and interfering, but guiding where I see they need help. I'm not the one who loves sitting in board meetings. I'd rather be talking to people about particular things, or go sit at their desk and chat to them, or get out there and do something with them. So that would be where I feel the most comfortable. But I have to also play the other roles when it's needed. And being inertly South African, the most difficult conversations are those courageous conversations where you've got to be tough about something that's not working, give someone negative or critical feedback. They're the moments I don't enjoy, but they're also part of my job, and I've got to do them.
So, final question, Peter, and it's been so great to have you here. I mean, it's been a really pleasurable conversation. 3 most valuable skills you think a leader should have? Out of all of your years of experience, what are the 3 things that you think are the things that you are your regular go-tos, the things that you find are the best traits when you're looking for a leader in your business? What are those 3 skills? What do people need to have or develop as leaders?
I don't know if this answers your question as skills, but I think probably the most important skill as a leader is to be able to listen. And listen to understand and not listen to answer. I think that's of key importance, because if you don't listen properly, how can you make the right decision, or how can you actually make the right decision in the current situation and context? So that's, I think, a key skill. The combination of being able to really trust in order to delegate is key, because only that way can you really do everything you need to be able to do. And then being able to inspire people, I think that's absolutely essential. And, you know, having a vision and being able to inspire people to greatness, that's what leadership is about, right? Management manages results, and at best you can be good with a good management. Great leadership inspires greatness, and that's what I think is key, is if you can inspire your team to do what they never imagined they could do, you know, without your inspiration, then you're a great leader. And that means you've got to be, I believe leaders have to have emotions. You have to be emotional, you have to show your emotions, and that inspires people into greatness. That's how I would see it.
been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck on the other 50% of your journey. And, you know, may BMW go on from strength to strength. And, you know, good luck with the electrification.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll do our best, and we should have a conversation one day about hydrogen and fuel cells, because that's an interesting facet that might be the future of zero emission driving, especially for Africa. And we've got some cars. We've got one in South Africa now. We're bringing some, and in January we're going to hold a kind of a thought leadership conference to look at how hydrogen can be used in industry and in automotive, and actually drive these cars. So I hope you're going to join us, and could be the future for Africa.
Could be, and I look forward to seeing that, because you know, I'm not stuck on one view. Although, you know, I do preach the electric car world a lot, but I like BMW's outlook on choice. What is your mantra?
Power of choice.
Power of choice.
Or technology openness.
Yes, I like that. I think that's a good thing for the consumer.
Yeah.
But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for being here.
It's been wonderful being here. Thanks very much.